Tuesday's show. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Today we have a group of great guests who are here to just answer a few questions about charter schools and ask questions about charter schools. So, reminder that please go and share. Please go and do a watch party on your page if you like to. And also, if you have any questions, please ask in the chat box. Um, any questions that you have about charter schools as we move forward. I am Bernita Bradley, and again, welcome to the Apparent Voice. Today, my first guest is Dan Quisenberry from MAPSA. I asked Dan to come on because he's been doing some great work in the community by addressing questions that parents and community members have around charter schools and how does it look, considering the pandemic and considering the supports that families need and families are desiring to have for their kids. And most importantly, today we have a group of youth that will be joining us later. And those youth have some questions for Dan and for other educators. And so thank you, Dan, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Bernita, for the invitation. It's nice to see you even this way. And thanks. It's an honor to be on here. Appreciate the work that the National Parent Union is doing and how important voices are like yours and how important the voices of students are. So it's an honor. Happy to try to communicate as much as possible in this crazy time we're all in and clarify some things that are so important to all of us. So thank you, Bernita.
Yes, you are welcome. You are welcome. So you've been on quite a few town halls talking about COVID support for families and school leaders. And two things I really wanted to address. I really wanted to ask questions about what is MAPSA's plan to support charter schools moving forward and to assure that families still have the autonomy of choice, because choice is very beneficial for Detroit families. To the extent of when a school is not working, we want to make sure we have the choice to move our kids, right? If need be, right? My first priority is to advocate, but outside of that, the choice factor is important for families in the city of Detroit. So what is MAPSA doing about that?
No, thank you, Bernita. And there's kind of two sides of this. I'll kind of speak to both and very willing to take more questions. Some respects, things people are going to ask about even on this chat would be the same for all schools. Everybody's in this predicament and pivoting quickly to support education and in people's homes. Mm-hmm. But your question's a really good one. We know and have known for 20 years that parents value having that choice for their students and what school they can attend, and maintaining that and going forward, having it be even more part of the education system will be important. So our role working with charter schools here in Michigan, the 300 that are across the state, first thing we've been doing is just informing everybody. There was a lot of confusion across the board, but school leaders just asking questions. What's expected? How do we do this? How's the state going to respond to this or that or something else? So we've done a lot of work over 3 or 4 weeks of just making sure people had relevant, real information. And Bernita, you mentioned there's been a couple of very resourceful programs that coalition of organizations have done in Detroit just to answer the community's questions. So just trying to provide information, that's the number one thing. Second is to, watch and make sure that we defend public education. So I'm as interested in how traditional schools are thriving or surviving through all this as I am in charter schools. You just want to make sure that those opportunities are available to parents through and on the other side of this.
Yeah. I think a lot of parents are concerned because a lot of the districts, right, like Detroit Public School Community School District, like they have resources that charter schools don't necessarily readily have at their disposal, right? And so even though charter schools get funding from all different other places, but how does that look for families who are saying, hey, well, I'm hearing that our public schools are getting, but then my kid, like, I'm not getting a response, or I'm afraid that my kid is gonna fall through the cracks. What does MAPSA have to say, or you have to say about that, right?
Yeah, staying in touch with the National Parents Union and organizations like that is always helpful. But for a variety of reasons, Bernita, I would suggest that parents communicate with their schools. And let me make a little side comment. If a parent isn't hearing from their school, man, that ought to be something that they push back and get some communication. My hope would be that schools are reaching out and communicating to parents about what's going on or what they need. That would include, Bernita, hey, you know what, something's happening, we're not being treated in the same way, or there's funding that's not coming our way. The school ought to be a good source. That's where we would go, is to inform schools so they can talk to parents, or talk to organizations like the National Parent Union or other friends or allies. In Detroit, you've got organizations like Detroit Voice for School Choice and other entities that speak up for community members. So if something were to happen, let me just be very direct. We had a very exciting announcement last week by some corporate folks in Detroit, providing $23 million in technology to parents
Yeah.
of the Detroit Public Schools District. I know there's efforts going on behind the scenes to raise a second set of funding for parents and students that attend charter schools, but that work's not complete yet. So it's just
Yeah,
something to
and that
watch.
made parents scared, right? That's one of the
Yes.
biggest things. I kind of posted about that last week also. That wait a minute, like what about charter school kids, right? Is this something punitive, right? And I understand, like you said, the conversations are happening, but I personally, as a mom of a charter school student and as a parent advocate and other parents, that morning there was a parent who had called me and said, or text me and said, do you know where I can get a tablet for my kid, right? And I was like, well, have you tried the school? I went through the regular protocol, right? And she was like, well, we've tried, no answer. And the child goes to a charter school, and she was like, oh, we finally got an answer, but then there was a no. And so then I hear about this where they've got all this funding, and it's like, wait, is this punitive for parents who have decided to practice choice? And again, there's the message that we're working on it, but we want to make sure that our voices are heard. Like parents,
Yeah.
charter school parents' voices are heard, right? So what is MAPSA saying? What do you say about that? Like, how does that feel?
Yeah, not good. And I don't want to sound contradictory, Bernita, because no, it's not. Nobody's intending for it to be punitive. And frankly, there were some charter school organizations, certainly those some serving the Detroit community, that were already ready for this. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's we're all here where we are today, but a year ago, we had school districts in Michigan that missed 20 days of school because of the snow and the cold. Well, that was 4 weeks of education. Well, they started to think then, what are we going to do when we can't have school? That's not acceptable to go that long. So
Mm-hmm.
there were some organizations that invested in the technology, came up with strategies to make sure kids had access to the internet, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So some charters in Detroit, again, we work with schools all over the state of Michigan, but it's a very similar problem. If you're living in northern Michigan or the UP, you may just not have
Yeah.
internet. Nobody does.
Yeah.
So resourcing people is job one, to make sure that education continue. And unfortunately, we should have all been prepared, but we weren't. So we're working to make sure those gaps are filled. Bernita, is the way I would say it, because there's some similarities. There's too many kids, particularly in Detroit, that don't have access, that need to, and it's
Yes.
understanding where those gaps are, working to fill them. A lot of charter schools have, but some have not, and we've got funders working to try to fill some of those holes. So again, if you're if your student, if you're aware of a student that doesn't have access either to a piece of technology or the internet or both, communicate with the school. That's at least the first place, because we've been doing some surveying, trying to find out where those gaps are, and then we start working on problems of filling those gaps. I mean, there's been supply problems, frankly. The
Yeah. So my
Chromebooks,
daughter's school,
suppliers of Chromebooks and things were selling out and across the
yeah,
country, and so it's just getting your hands on them.
yeah. Yeah, so my daughter's school, they did finally bring a laptop, delivered a laptop literally the end of last
Hmm.
week. And it was so weird because me being a mom who's always advocating doing this work with families, right? I can get a request, in and get something that's needed. And that's predominantly because
Right.
the laptop she was using crashed over the course of time, right? But then here's my daughter's online and she's advocating with her friends and she's asking them like, have y'all heard from the school, have you talked to anybody from the school, or blah blah, because I'm getting emails and blah blah blah, but I'm that mom who gives it to them all the time.
That's
Like,
right.
if you don't do, I'm advocating for not just mine but everybody in that building. And if I hear about another kid having a problem, I'm advocating for them. So what about those parents like that aren't hearing anything from charter schools? What would you say to them? Like, and they're reaching out to schools, right? Because we always ask parents, go to the school, email or whatever, right? But then we're asked to be gracious, but yet there's emails that are saying, well, as long as the kids are proficient when they return back to school, they'll graduate, or they'll go to the next level. But
Yeah.
what does proficiency look like,
Right.
for a kid who
Right.
hasn't had access?
Right. So there's a couple things in what you just asked, Bernita, all very important questions. One, on the advocacy side, or parents speaking up. Let's just be honest. Some parents may be hesitant to, or feel uncomfortable with the school, or not know how to do it well. So yeah, community organizations, other parents, please, I would say to any parent, don't not reach out. You need to reach out some way, figure it out. I got a call from a state official last week from a parent who had been trying to track down a form that they needed the school to sign. The state official contacted me and I got a hold of the school. Well, bottom line was the mom had the wrong phone number. Okay, well, that's
Mhm.
just right. I dial the wrong number all the time too. But persistence, she had reached out to some other folks and we made it work. So I would encourage people to do that. Maybe it's a community organization, maybe it's somebody like you, Bernita, another parent at the school or someone like that, to problem solve. My
Mhm.
desire, my hope would be, because we're certainly telling schools this: communicate with your parents. That's just job one. On the other question, and I don't want to just ramble because this is really long too, but it really important. This this matters. This, your education of kids is matters, and yet, this is not an ideal circumstance for any school or any student in terms of learning and being where they should be or where they would have been had they been able to stay in their buildings. But it still matters because, yeah, there's all kinds of communication going on from schools to students, or back the other way of, well, what difference does it make? We'll just forget this and pick up where we left off. I wouldn't accept that, because
Yeah.
something needs
Yeah.
to happen. And this sounds kind of negative, Bernina. I'll stop here, but uh, school next year is not going to look like it looked 90 days ago. It's
No, it's
just
not.
not.
No, it's
So
not.
if we accept time off now, we're in for a whole year of a problem, and that's not acceptable for kids. It
Yeah.
just isn't.
Yeah. And I'll even go as far as to talk about the fact that some districts are actually having virtual classrooms. Their teachers are doing like a wonderful job, but a lot of people in Detroit and the surrounding area are running into these loopholes of, oh, well, the teacher will kind of, have open hours for the kids to contact them or things like that. And I mean, how is that considered as instructional time when a child is asked to reach out if you need help, right?
Yeah. I want to kind of find that middle ground, Bernita. Kind of, what should expectations be like? Because I think I know there's charter schools, likely traditional schools, that were prepared and are doing a great job and engaging families. Everybody's kind of getting into a groove. There's some people on the opposite end of the spectrum that just haven't gotten it done yet. But nobody was ready for this. So
Yeah.
some opportunity to okay, the schools I'm impressed with that we've had a lot of conversation about took those first few days way back on March 13th and said, okay, let's turn the corner, let's get ready. And it was just basics. Who's got technology, who doesn't, how do we make sure they get it? Let's make sure lunch and breakfast programs are in operation. Let's make sure there's special education connections or social or emotional mental health kinds of services that had been being provided are still going to be provided. Those were basic needs. Someplace past that phase, it was, let's get into the academics, let's make contact, let's engage the families, let's figure out how we're all going to do this. Everybody's learning about Zoom, everybody's learning about a Google Classroom or whatever the platform would be. Those are phase one. Phase two, we ought to be, for a lot of schools, I would hope they would be past those first couple phases into saying, okay, how do we make this educational experience more meaningful? And I'm not an educator, so I'm not the best person to speak to some of that, but teachers themselves are thrown into the same environment, right? They may be trying to teach at the same time, got their own kids at home, or maybe a first responder spouse who's in and out of the house a lot or something, or maybe they're a single parent. So everybody's got situations. So yeah, there's that balance of, okay, we can be gracious with each other, but we ought to still have expectations that things are progressing.
Yeah.
And
Because
Bernita,
I think we're being gracious as parents. I really do think parent and community are being gracious, but now that it's going on 6 weeks, it's like, okay, and we're hearing about these other things happening in other districts. We're like, wait a minute, like, this is unacceptable at this point.
right.
We want some concrete, clear, like either cancel school for now and say, here's some enrichment packets to keep your kids kind of on track. I don't believe we should do that because I believe that summer learning loss is enough. I mean, and then kids being isolated in the house and in their, I just think we should not do that. But there needs to be a plan and it needs to be concise across the board. It shouldn't be just that we're empathetic only of teachers,
no, that's right.
Educators who have families, because this is new to all of us also. Yeah, and I think they should be even more empathetic. And my other thing is, if they're getting paid for it, I feel like they should be doing some more effort. Because if it wasn't a pandemic, they would have to do something. You know, they would be doing something with students, even if it's 15 minutes an hour, or that work day has been cut down to 3.5 hours, but you're still interacting with kids. You know.
Yeah, those expectations should be there. That's fair. It really is. And Brittany and I, we've known each other for a long time. I like phrases that mean a lot. Kids need and want to learn. Teachers need and want to teach. So if you can hang on to those premises, then it's not an unreal expectation to say to a teacher, hey, I want to make sure my kid is responding. So what do you need from us? How can we help do this? My expectations are that education continues. I bet you your life circumstances have been disrupted too, but I need some learning going on here for my kid. That's not unreal. And I think the vast majority of teachers would welcome that. And if they're not, okay, well, we probably had a problem anyways, Bernita, just as showing a light on it, right?
Yeah, I beg to differ a little bit, right?
Okay, all right. Well, here's another piece of it I'd love to hear some conversation about, and not love it because I welcome it, but we've all known, even before this crisis, there were gaps, there were problems, issues where kids were not being educated equitably. This has magnified all that. Boy, if we don't get our head around understanding where those are and address them coming out of this, shame on all of us.
Shame on everybody. Yeah. So with that being said, let's go to our other panelists. So we have a room full of young girls, you guys, a room full of them. So the first time I've ever had this many people on here to host for a chat, but let's just go ahead and bring them on. And Ms. Collins will introduce them. They are, these young girls are part of a program with Alternatives for Girls. So go ahead, Ms. Collins, I'll let you introduce. You're on mute.
There we go. Okay. How's everybody? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, my name is Alethea Collins, and I'm the Youth Outreach Coordinator here at Alternative for Girls. And we're joined by our peer educators, which are some college and freshman college students that I can't really see everybody that's with us. And so they pretty much been affected by the pandemic and just have some questions and concerns that I felt like, well, Ms. Ramican felt like this would be a good panel discussion for them to get some answers from other than ourselves.
Yeah.
I can't see everybody that's on here, but they're very
They
inquisitive.
should be coming on now. Sasha's moving everybody over as we go. So you'll see little screens popping up, and we have Betsa and Samaya. You guys can unmute if you like. Just be careful about the noise that's going on behind you. If you so young ladies, the ones that have already joined.
Hello.
Uh-oh, maybe we should mute. You're ringing. Yep, that was yours. Thank you, Brianna. So any questions that you have for Dan? I know you guys are in college and some in high school. Any questions that you have for him around education and how it looks for you?
Well, I had one question because I'm currently a senior in high school. So I was just wondering how is like the college life after the begin? Because I know a lot of people have been affected by this, like myself. I got accepted into Ferris State University, and I was thinking, how is it gonna be when I go to college? Like, I know it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be very different, but I know people are still dealing with the pandemic themselves. So I don't know. I'm scared to see how it's gonna turn out. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for your honesty. This is scary, but as an older guy and a guy who has daughters, don't let this moment define you that way. Colleges, everybody has been thrown into the unknown. So I would say some of what I was saying to Bernita, which is hopefully where you're at in high school right now, they're completing your requirements. They're not just going to pass you on because you still deserve the last a couple months of your education at high school. And then for college, we've been watching and listening. I think universities and colleges are still trying to decide, will they actually hold class? Because like K-12 schools, they've pushed classes to being online. So you could be facing the first semester or something of doing school online at Ferris. Now, the good news on that side of it is universities have more experience generally. I'm speaking in a real broad sense, have more experience with that and probably are better prepared to deliver it in a meaningful way. No, it's not. I mean, I went to college too, and that face-to-face experience matters. So it's not a forever thing, but it might be the way you start. I don't know if that's helpful. Again, I want to encourage you. I'm one of those people, though, that I'd rather deal with the harsh realities that we have and then move on from there than to be told something that's not true. So nobody knows exactly what fall is going to look like yet, but you still got accepted. Congratulations. You'll still get a college education, and this will work. We'll make it happen. Good for you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm Casey, and I'm also a high school senior, so I'm going off to college. And that was like my big fear too, just like Vessel, the whole like how are we going to transition type thing, and how you just said it might be online. That's like a big fear for me too, because I'm not good with the online. You know, I like to be able to talk to my teacher, see, you know, the one-on-one experience in the classroom, you know. So I don't know. It's just like, it's hard to try to adapt, but I want to see what's going to be the big plan, because that is a big adjustment.
Yeah, I don't have a new response. colleges and universities are assessing that as we speak. So let me give you a context. I'm more familiar with what K-12 schools are thinking about, but I think it's what universities are thinking about. Is on the one side, like you're saying, that one-on-one experience, we could make classrooms safe, right? So you could figure out a way with a lot of classrooms to make sure people are distanced. You might be wearing a mask. People could wash their hands. That could work in a classroom. But what about college broadly, where you've got hundreds or thousands of kids and interacting? There's going to be some concern about, is it safe yet to put people in that environment or not? So those are the kinds of things I'm sure they're wrestling with, particularly if there's housing issues, where you're moving away from home to go live on campus. That's a whole nother set of dynamics for higher ed. So just know, I think this is important, but you guys are bright people or you wouldn't be on this thing. Just because we're all adults doesn't mean we have answers for this yet, but that's okay, right? Everybody figures stuff out. And my heart wants to go to your voices matter. People, we need to be listening to all of you to make sure we're providing good solutions regardless of the environment that we're in. So again, this isn't a forever thing. Probably that first semester is going to look different than it would have been, but once we get past that, college will come back. You'll be where you are. It'll be a whole new experience. Take advantage of that from that standpoint. But yeah, nobody planned this. It is what it is. And don't let it be an obstacle for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Anything about high school, specific questions?
Hi, my name is Cassidy Hill, and I'm a 10th grader. And my question is, like, how are we going to be graded? That's my question, because I don't really know from my school. I don't know, like, how we're being graded. So
great. That's a great question, Cassidy. Again, all these questions are great, but very relevant. Let me tell you what the state of Michigan has decided, and then it should give you some direction on what you can do. Michigan is what they call a local control state, which means Michigan Department of Education sets some parameters and standards, but schools, district by district by district, make those decisions on their own. So in this environment, some of those statewide expectations were waived. So the reality is, Cassidy, your school can decide how to grade and what to do. Let me give you a push. Some schools it's been suggested to them that they don't give you anything but a pass or a fail. That sounds kind of easy. Please, and you may not end up having control over this, your school will. We've been encouraging people to don't accept that, because if you go to colleges or the NCAA, like the sport criteria, their standards there, if you have a pass, it's considered a D. Well, you probably are earning something more than a D, or you ought to have the opportunity to earn more than a D. So the schools have authority to grade you on their own criteria in their own way. And we're hoping people will actually do that. Sure, it's going to be harder work, but if you want a grade, I would hope that school is going to work with you to provide that to you. So the first place I'd go is to your school and just say, hey, I'm interested. I'd like to know what's happening here. How am I going to be graded? What are the expectations I've yet to complete? Because I want to get my diploma. I want to graduate.
okay, thank you.
You bet. Good luck, Cassidy.
Thanks.
I have something to add on to that too, as well. Like with the grading and such like that. So my school is doing this thing called Microsoft Teams, and like at first they did tell me that it was either pass or fail, but I'm like, I don't want to like depend on that because I don't know like if I would actually get all my credits and stuff like that. So yeah, I joined Microsoft Teams. Like you meet up with your teachers like every day of the week, like maybe not every day of the week, but like 2 days out the week at different times and stuff. And they'll give you assignments and different files and stuff. And then you just like any questions that you need, then they'll update you with it and stuff like that. So that's one thing that my school is doing right now to help. With the
So are they grading you? Have they changed it from pass to fail? Or
well, I just downloaded it yesterday because I didn't know, like, it's like we're getting information, but we're not getting everything that we needed. So like I was like, well, let me see what's going on, because I was really confused at first, because I was hearing that we didn't have to like go on Microsoft Teams if we were failing the class, but I'm not failing any of my classes, so I was thinking that I didn't have to do anything because it was just an enrichment. But so yeah, they are giving us assignments and they are marking you present. And they just want you to check up with your teacher to make sure that you're still on task and stuff and doing that. But I mean, like, I don't know. I don't really think that's really benefiting me right now, because like Casey said, like this online stuff is not really the same as actually being on like one-on-one with a teacher. So they gave us a packet with everything that we need to do, but it's just still not the same.
Yeah, yeah. And you're not talking about just because you're not there with your friends. It's like literally the learning piece, right?
Yes, because this is my senior year as well, so it's like I don't really care about, my friends or whatever. It's just like I really want to graduate. I have all my credits. I've been going to class when school was in session. Like I've been doing the work. I don't want to get, thrown off just because of this virus happened or whatever, this pandemic. And like I just really want to graduate on time and stuff like that.
Tell me your first name.
Jaleesa.
Jaleesa, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Again, I don't have perfect answers here, but I would ask the school, how are they planning to treat that? Is it because it sounds like they're doing the right things, giving you work, working through the technology, making sure you're actually showing up, that's attendance, right? So yeah, are they going to give you grades, or is it just going to be pass fail? Bernita knows I'm kind of a fellow troublemaker, so maybe I'm getting you in trouble with your schools, but I'd push at that. I really want a grade. I know I've already got my credits, but I really want a grade because my high school transcript matters throughout my life.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of it, if one of you were my daughter and the school said, no way, we're not doing anything, it's just pass or fail, I would keep track myself. I accomplished these projects. This is what I learned. This is what I did. Make it kind of your portfolio. The positive side of this, there isn't anybody on this planet that doesn't know we went through this pandemic. So if you go to some college, I'd stand there with you and argue with some professor to say, you know what, that last semester counted, because here's what was going on and here's what I accomplished, and I was engaged and I was doing it, and I'd make a case for myself. So don't hesitate to keep track of yourself, what you're learning.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to what Dan is saying also. So we were on with Ashley Johnson last week from Detroit College Access Network, and she's willing to come back on with you guys another day also to answer some of those college questions. But one of the things she talked about was creating a portfolio for yourself right now. Like this is a perfect time for you to kind of get together some of those certificates, even some of the certificates you may have gotten that you think are like, oh, I got that for being a part of a bake sale competition, whatever it may be. Get them together and create your own little portfolio for the colleges that you're going to, or for the scholarships that you're applying to, and explain to them what's going on. Like most of them know what's going on right now, but even if there's other areas of your life that you kind of fell off on, like my daughter fell off in 9th grade. And so her portfolio though explains, her portfolio explains that fall off. It explains like, well, I was bullied, or, I was distracted emotionally at this time, but here's some other things I was a part of. She's a part of Alternatives for Girls. So here's this certificate from Alternatives for Girls. I was a part of the community music school. So here's the certificate, or here's even an outline of what I did over that time to show that it wasn't just about academics. It was about more than academics. So make sure you create stuff like that. So anybody else, Mandy, what's going on where you are with your charter school? How's everything? Because I know you guys are getting a little more support than we are here in Detroit, or I think you are.
My school's been handling things pretty well. A lot of things were already digital for my classes in particular, so there wasn't too much of a change aside from where I was for me. But they've been very supportive. They reply to everything very quickly. They've been delivering lunches. One person who's been exceptionally supportive is the teacher that runs our GSA, who has stopped by with a care package now. the whole school has been working well, even though, no one's doing fantastic right now.
Mhm.
But overall, they're doing a good job, even if, like, it's impossible for everything to be the same. They have gone to pass fail for every class. So I think they're responding well, but we'll have to see how what they're doing pans out.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else here have any questions or just
I have
any
a
concerns?
question. I had a question.
Go ahead. Mhm.
I have a question.
Nicole, let's get Nicole first, and then we'll go to Yasmin.
So, well, it's not really like a question. It's more like a statement. So, I'm a
Mhm.
junior, and so I'm going into my senior year. And as far as the virus and the pandemic that's going on, I'm more concerned about us returning back to school, if we'll return back to school on time. And as far as the SAT, we were supposed to take the SAT in April, and it got canceled. It got pushed back. And I'm concerned about my SAT score because, like, it got pushed back, and what if we don't go to school on time? We're supposed to take the SAT when we return to school, and we don't know for sure if we will be returning to school in September. And as far as if I'm going to be able to take the SAT, I know it might be a way I can take it, but as far as with my school, I don't know if I'll be able to take it, and I know that's something you need for college. So that's one of the things I'm concerned about.
Yeah, it's a legitimate one, Nicole, and I don't have the answer today, but I know there's an organization called the College Board that runs a lot of those college acceptance exams, and they're, besides delaying the ones that were supposed to take in place this spring and putting them into fall, they're certainly aware of what students are going through. Again, this isn't just happening to you, it's happening to everybody, so they're trying to accommodate that. That's the good side of it. And I step out a little bit here. If you ask people who are making decisions, they're leery to tell you definitively school's going to open and here's what we know, because frankly, they don't know yet.
Right.
I'm just telling you, there'll be a lot of motivation for people to open buildings up. It's going to look different. There'll be distancing. People may be asked to wear masks, even just the bandana kind of thing. There'll be other protocols. Maybe you won't have big events where everybody gathers. So it's going to look a little different, but there'll be a lot of interest in going back to buildings and having school be more like the way it was and not just distance. But there might be some, I want to talk to the positive side of it. If we can figure out this technology and the one-on-one attention it can draw, it can be beneficial to what happens in the building. Bernita, you said something about summer learning losses into the future. So Nicole, even for your senior year, you might have a little bit of both going on in a positive way, right? You'd be in the building more, but maybe more than now, but maybe not like normal. You might have a rolling schedule that looks a little bit more like college or something, where you're in the building for a lot, but you're at home learning on technology for some of it. That's not an awful thing, but people are still figuring that out. But there's motivation to get people back in buildings and make it as normal as possible and keep them safe from the virus.
And I'll add to that real quick that the colleges, I actually received a list of some colleges who are considering, so it's not edged in stone, they're considering passing on the SAT for this year's students. Say that again?
I've heard that too. I didn't
Yes.
think it was true.
Yeah, so there are colleges in conversation about that, but what I would say is Khan Academy has some free online SAT prep, and knowing that some of those deadlines will still be pushed back, but making sure that now if there's free college, Detroit College Access Network has an online like prep that they're doing, and I'll get that to you guys also. That's Ashley Johnson also, and they're preparing young kids for that college access. So maybe you can benefit from doing some of that over the summer. And I personally, and a group of other parents have been asking for the summer jobs. for them to begin to incorporate some of this in the jobs that you guys are hold for the summer. Like that summer job, well, most of it is going to be online anyway, right? So this is the perfect time to start writing your essays, figuring out what you're going to do about your scholarships and how that looks, writing your personal statements and all of that kind of stuff. So think about things like that, explaining who you are, as opposed to, I don't want to say stressing, because I think everybody's stressed and I think it's a legitimate stress, but as opposed to feeling like that's your everything. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yasmin, there you are. I see you. Did you have a question or a statement?
Yes, I did. So just to touch base on what Nicole said, I kind of had the same question about the SAT. You kind of answered that for me, but my whole thing where I'm kind of like leaning on is for next year, I'm a junior too, and as of currently right now, and I'm supposed to be a senior next year, but they're saying for College Board that we're supposed to take the SAT when we go back in September. My whole thing is I'm stuck on that, since all this thing with the virus and stuff happened and we got out of school and all this, my thing is I feel that for me, I don't know if it's for everybody else, but for me, I feel like I'm still not at the point where I'm ready to take the SAT, because I feel like, the SAT reflects off what you learned through years of high school, school and stuff. So I feel like as teenagers in high school, we're not going to be already like prepared to take the SAT in September when you go back to school, because we didn't get that full year of learning as we should have got. So I feel like that's not really going to help us. They're saying, like, I know some schools did say, they're lifting it for us, they're not really counting it, but I feel like that's still a big thing for college.
Yeah.
They still
and I would want you to, when we get on with Ashley, I've been trying to seek somebody who will host a personal kind of like SAT prep for me, for youth all over the city, like maybe even if it's twice a month until school starts back. So we'll stay in contact. And if there's anything that I do find that's not even through me, like I'll make sure I get it to Miss Collins for you guys, so you can be doing this online. Because my daughter was saying the same thing, like her school was supposed to have been having SAT prep back in September, and they only had literally one SAT prep session for a half an hour one day, the whole junior year, right? So this is not just a COVID thing. This is, again, equity, right? What have schools been doing to prepare you? So I want to make sure that you guys are on task and as much as possible. And I'll invite you back, Ashley, to be with Ashley and Devon, who talk a little further about this. So I will have to, unfortunately, say that we are out of time today, young ladies. I know we didn't get a lot of questions out. I didn't realize me and Dan had talked so long before, but you guys will be back on the show, most definitely, whether it's just smaller groups or the whole large group. But I'd love for you to let Ms. Collins know what some of your thoughts are and who you want on the show, and I'll do my very best to get them here to talk to you. Even if it's not on a live show, like even if it's off time, and you guys just need to talk to somebody about your concerns, I'll make sure I do my best to get them in a room with you, okay?
Bernita, I want to say too, I was listening to all the questions. So as conversations I'm in with policymakers and leaders, I'm gonna speak up for you guys, because I'm encouraged that you care so much about what you're doing. It makes sense that you care, but we need to address your questions.
Yeah, and I invite Ms. Collins to connect with Dan to maybe, if you have some meetings, Dan, that these young ladies can join to be a voice for our young people. Invite them to some of those meetings to share their thoughts, because it's nothing like your own voices being in a room of change. It's nothing like it, okay? For you to speak up for yourself, and no matter where you are, make sure you do that. I thank you all for joining me today. This has been the Aparent Voice. I thank you for extending the extra time with me. I look forward to talking back with you. Thank you, Ms. Collins. Thank you, Dan. Thank Ms. Ramakin again, and for even finding me. I'm humbled that she even chose for them to come on my show. Thank you, young ladies.
Thank
you,
you.
Mandy, also from
Thank
out of
you.
Detroit.
Thank
She
you.
gave us a dab. She gave us a dab. I like that. Dab on.
We still ain't going. Oh, no.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
love
you
you,
so
ladies.
much for having us. We'll be back.
You are welcome. You are welcome, and I look forward to it again.
See you girls later.
Okay, see you.
Thank you.
Everybody
Bye.
stay safe.
You too.